record. Welcome, everybody. We are so happy to have you with us today for what unfortunately is our second to last session in this segment. Today's topic is cross-sector collaboration. Next slide, please. As we get started, I know I've had the pleasure to see many of you over the past few years, but if I haven't virtually met you yet, my name is Stacy Villano with the Global Rural Nursing Exchange Network. We have had the great privilege of working with the USD over the past several years to bring forward your real-life experiences to our global community of rural nurses, nursing students, educators, and researchers who are focused on improving the health and communities in rural populations worldwide. This is particularly exciting to us because we are always looking for ways to help others foster interest in bringing nursing students into rural communities and to helping other educators find avenues by which that they can adopt these practices in their respective universities around the world. So this has been a great experience for all of us, and we're really happy to be a part of it. Next slide, please. As we get started today, one quick note. If you have entered into the webinar on somebody else's link and your name is not your own, please update that. You should be automatically muted. If not, please make sure that your microphone is off. This way we prevent any unnecessary feedback during the presentation. Keep your video on at all times. This helps with the collaboration and contributions. Given the nature of our discussions, please make sure you maintain confidentiality as you ask questions or share. And if you have any questions or if you have any technological difficulties during the course of the session, just drop that in the chat. I always monitor that, and we'll make sure that we do our best to get you some help as quick as possible. Keep in mind that in order to support the growth of the ECHO movement, Project ECHO does collect participation data for the TeleECHO program. And we do encourage you to ask questions, to share your experiences during the Q&A periods in between each one of our presenter sessions. If you have something that you want to ask and you don't want to forget it, drop it in the chat and we'll ask that on your behalf during the time. You can always unmute as well when it is time for Q&A, but we do hope that you will participate with the presenters today. And next slide, please. With that, I have the pleasure of turning this session over to Dawn Warren. Dawn.
Thank you, Stacy. Thanks again, everybody, for being here. It's always great to see so many people have logged on to join us. So my name is Dawn Warren. A lot of you have listened to some of these sessions before, so it's great to see names again. As she said, we're wrapping up our series on the rural South Dakota series and in reference to the HRSA grant, and we've been doing this for 3 years now. We're the tail end of this, and the title today is Cross-Sector Collaboration Partnerships between University Schools and Tribal Health. So as you know, the first part of the presentation will be, we have 3 students presenting on where they were at, where they completed their HRSA immersion clinical, and then we will end it today. I'm very honored to have Michelle Seaton-Birch with us, who is one of our marketing specialists and recruiters for School Health Sciences at USD. And she just does a fantastic job in all over the state, but has just done a lot of great things working with the tribal lands, tribal schools, et cetera, to try and really get more people, Native Americans, into nursing and healthcare in general. Okay, next slide, please. So again, the HRSA grant is was a 3-year grant. I say was because it literally, the last group just finished. 3-year grant with a $1 million award, who had multiple parts to it. One big part was the recruitment on the tribal lands. We had another big part, which these students will talk about today, which was where the students did a 132-hour clinical immersion in a small rural hospital across the state. And we had over 100 students participate in this grant, and it was just a fantastic experience. So next slide, please. So for those who may be watching down the road from other countries, we are located in the United States of America, and we are in South Dakota, which is right there in the red. And this is just some of the many places that we've had students. We've had a lot more even since then. And many of these places we've had multiple students at. So all over the state, other than kind of up at the top and to the west, there's just hardly anything out there, and thus hardly any, no hospitals. And we just really didn't get any students out there. But everywhere else we have been. Okay, next slide, please. So our objectives today, to learn about the key lessons learned, again, by the students who completed the clinical immersion in rural hospitals in South Dakota. And then we're going to talk about cross-sector collaboration partnerships between university, schools, and tribal health. Okay. So sharing what we learned. This is my favorite part, is hearing from the students. They all had such excellent experiences and just really different depending on where they were at. So we're going to start today with Maddie Palmer. Maddie completed her 3-week clinical immersion at the Huron Regional Medical Center in Huron, South Dakota. So Maddie, I am going to turn it over to you.
You can go to the next slide. So my nurse was in the orange, but I also just took a picture because this is where the South Dakota State Fair is. So with the healthcare workforce shortages, I honestly didn't think there was much with the nurses. They were very well staffed. But the one thing I will say is Huron does have an ICU, so they are able to take critical patients, but the only problem that they have is they do not have enough nurses that are trained in ICU. So for instance, my nurse was ICU trained and we did end up having to take a patient, but we had to end up transferring and shipping them out to Sioux Falls because there was no night nurse that was ICU trained. And then one thing I would say with shortages and there's their medical supplies. One thing I noticed was they were always out of flushes. They never had enough, and they even sometimes ended up putting sterile caps on them and would use them on that same patient again if they needed it during that shift. The hospital overview, Huron's I would say is pretty big for a rural town. They have about a little over 14,000 people. Hospital in general, they have 3 floors. First floor contains the ER, outpatients, and same day surgery. Their second floor is their med surg floor, and then also attaches their ICU beds. And then the third floor is just labor and delivery. My memorable story, sadly enough, is me getting beat up. We ended up getting a patient. She came in 2 weeks ago to the ER and was there for a UTI. She got treated, she got sent home. The nursing home ended up was giving her the wrong antibiotic, and she ended up coming back because of increased confusion, was very agitated, very violent. And so they ended up finding out that she was taking the nursing home was giving her the wrong antibiotic, something along those lines. And she ended up going septic and then was also developed C. diff. And she was just completely erratic, was not herself. Family was saying this is not how she was at all. And with the small hospitals as well, they do not have COs to where they have enough workers to just have someone sit with them. So we did end up having to put her in 4-point restraints and have to do all the measures because no medications were hitting her as well that to help calm her down. But she did end up throwing hands at a lot of our staff members. She was pulling hair, she was hitting, kicking, just all of the above. And we did end up after the course of days, she was a lot calmer, was definitely getting back to herself. And just some key lessons that I learned there were definitely you have to be ready for anything. Their med surg floors can be ages babies to elderly. So it was kind of weird seeing oh, my one patient is a 2-year-old and then my other patient is a 90-year-old. So that was something that I definitely had to just be ready for. And then also in rural hospitals, I've noticed that you have to like, well, at least in Huron, we had to ship off a lot of patients to Sioux Falls just because they didn't have the proper care for them.
Maddie, can you give examples of what kind of patients? I assume like probably acute MIs, right?
Yeah.
Intensive care, you said probably had to go out. I can't remember, they do labor and delivery there?
Yes.
Okay. So anybody just really critical, or I suppose, or major surgeries you'd have to send out?
Major surgeries, definitely like any heart stuff. They don't really have like a lot of specialists there. They have specialists, but like they come maybe I would say once a week or it's like once in every so often. But they definitely like anything probably like that's either like neuro, I would say as well, would be
Mm,
shipped off as well.
okay. Yeah, because they might not have had a neurologist specialist there. Is that right? Or sometimes there's specific
Yes.
specialists that they don't. Okay. Will you also just talk? I don't know how many of these people were on last week, but we had a really good discussion about Huron just has a lot of diversity in that community. Will you talk about some of the different populations of patients that you have there and how some of that is handled as far as language barriers, et cetera?
Yeah, they are a very diverse town. Like I would say the big ones are the Karen tribe. And then there's a lot of Spanish, and then there's also Indian that I saw while I was there. The language barriers were definitely hard, but they actually have something I've never seen this in like a bigger hospital like Sioux Falls, but they actually like hired people, like especially for the Karen tribe, what they speak, they actually have people who speak the Karen language and then who also speak English. They actually have them come into the hospital and are in the rooms with us. But if they're unable to do that, we do have like the iPads that are able to help us with the translating.
Excellent. Okay, questions for Maddie? The only thing I'll just add, of course, with you all being students, and I know a lot of you are close to graduation, but I think the memorable story is such a classic example of UTIs. When I worked in the emergency department at Monument, when an ambulance would call in and say they were coming in with an elderly person with acute confusion, our first question was, do they have a UTI? And a lot of times it was a UTI that hadn't been caught, or like you said, if the culture and sensitivity didn't get back in time or whatever, they were on the wrong antibiotic. So those confusion with elderly is a lot of times related to a UTI, and it can get bad. So that was a classic example, Maddie, and I'm glad you shared that story.
Thank you.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to Maggie. Maggie Schmidt completed her clinical immersion at Monument Health Hospital in Sturgis. And we had multiple students who completed their immersion in Sturgis and just had a wonderful experience. So, Maggie, I will turn it over to you to share what you learned.
Okay. Yeah, so I was in Sturgis. You could go to the next slide if you want. Perfect. They have a med surg unit, and then they have an emergency department and also an urgent care. There is a nursing home connected to the building, but it's not affiliated with Monument. Their med surg, they have like 18 beds, and then in the emergency department, they have 6 beds and then 2 trauma bays. And then this is an example of kind of what one of their trauma bays looks like. Sturgis is like 7,000 people too. So, um, for the healthcare workforce challenges and shortages, I would just say the thing I saw the most was a PCT shortage. So just like help from CNAs and stuff. A lot of times they were understaffed, or I would look at their board and a PCT could have all of the patients just for themselves. So that is definitely something that they struggle with. But their nursing staff is really well staffed. A memorable story I would say was just I had a really critical patient who had to keep being transferred to Rapid City with the bigger facility at Monument, just because she was having a lot of like cardiac issues, and then MRSA, and just kind of hemodynamically unstable. So she did have to like keep going back and forth for health issues that kept progressing. And then I think that kind of goes into my like key lesson learned. I would say just like the importance of rural healthcare and like the accessibility of it, and then also making sure that in these rural communities they have the resources they need in order to care for patients. A big thing that I saw with traumas that came in is they use telehealth, and I feel like that's a great kind of like advancement that they've made, so that you are able to communicate with more people and they can watch and kind of see maybe things that your team of 3 people isn't seeing. So I thought that was a really good lesson to be learned.
Awesome. Thank you, Maggie. One thing I wanted to have you talk about, then you said you kept that one person had to keep going back and forth. And I know they have an ICU, but do they use the ICU very often? And are all the nurses able to work in the intensive care? If I remember, it's just like 2 or 3 beds, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's a 3-bed ICU. There are certain things that they do and don't do. They can do I know one they were there and it was a like a norepinephrine drip. So they can kind of do that and manage that. You do have to be trained. Typically they like you to be, if you're like emergency department trained, then typically like they will put you in the ICU. But once they really need like heavy monitoring and maybe like multiple drips, then that's when I would say that they transfer.
Okay. And then for those that don't know, how far away are you from Rapid City, from the transfer facility?
It's like a 30-40 minute drive-ish.
Mhm. Mhm. And Maggie wasn't there during the motorcycle rally, but for those who don't know, during the motorcycle rally, the population increases exponentially. And then the emergency room is very crazy, and they have lots of flights. They have to fly out a lot of people to Monument Health, and then of course lots of ambulance trips. So yeah, great place to learn. And this was her preceptor in this picture with her, and she's precepted a lot for us, and she was absolutely phenomenal, wasn't she, Maggie?
Yeah, she was great.
She was great. Okay. Any questions for Maggie?
Dawn, I actually have a couple questions.
Sure, go ahead.
I want to hear more about your the patient and MRSA.
Honestly, I didn't really have to deal with it that much. She ended up having some toes amputated and stuff, and then like osteomyelitis, and then they wound cultured it, and it came back positive for MRSA. So then they put her on Vanco, and then she ended up what they thought her platelets dropped and she had thrombocytopenia, and they thought that it was from the Vanco, so then they had to switch her to another antibiotic, and it was just kind of like a whole thing.
So they were having trouble treating her, finding a antibiotic to treat the MRSA
Yeah.
for her in the letter. Okay, which is common, can be common. So
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
So Don, when they fly during the rally, do they typically just do helicopter?
yeah, it's too close for fixed wing, but if, unless they have to fly them like to Denver or something, say you have a burn patient or just a really, really bad trauma that we can't even handle here, or once in a while during the rally, our ER is so full that they have to divert. But for anything close, it's going to be the helicopter. But we do have a fixed wing if we need to go further away. That's a great question. I'm glad you brought up the MRSA thing too, because yeah, vancomycin it's really hard to treat MRSA, but vanco works really well, but it's also very hard on the organ. Causes a lot of side effects. So I'm glad you brought that up. Other questions or thoughts? Okay. All right. Thank you so much. We will move on. All righty. And our next student that's going to talk today is Anisha Scott. Anisha completed her clinical immersion at Custer Hospital up here in the beautiful Black Hills. And so I am going to turn it over to Anisha.
All right. So I was in the Custer ER primarily. You can go to the next slide. So this is just a picture of me outside of the ER, and then there's actually a garden that one of the providers funds and supports, and they
Can you go back a slide, please?
it's for
There you go. They got to see the garden.
Yeah, very good. So that's a garden that is funded by the provider, and she also makes sure she keeps it all tidy and stuff. It's for patient and staff use, just to kind of make the patients like, give them like something new to look at and stuff like that. You can go to the next slide now. And then this is just the front of the hospital. And then off to the right, when you go through those doors, is a portion. Yeah, that's about it for that slide. You can go to the next one. And then, so for healthcare shortages, there wasn't really necessarily a nurse shortage, but they did talk about provider and tech shortages. And for that, for like techs, they're starting to recruit in the high schools. And so they're hiring as young as 16, and then they're just considered like junior techs until they turn 18. And then with that, they'll also, an incentive with that is that they'll also do continued education. So they'll help fund financially for them to go to school for whatever they want, like nursing, medical wise, I should say, but for like nursing, or if they want to become a doctor, they'll help them financially with that. And then for the providers, so normally providers work in the clinic and the ED, and they round on their med surg patients. But they're finding that that might be causing some. And so right now they're trialing with two providers. One preferred to work in the ED and one preferred to work in the clinic. So they're letting them just stay strictly to those areas and seeing if that kind of helps create a balance and allow for them to have more sanity in mind. But otherwise, no, I mean, supplies a little bit, but nothing crazy. But those are like the two big shortages that when I met with the director of nursing, he mentioned. And then for hospital overview, so Custer is a little over 2,000 in population, so not super big. Within the hospital, there's a clinic, there's an ED, which has 2 trauma bays, 2 ED rooms, just like generic checkup rooms. And then there's a procedure room for any procedures that need to be done, but they also emphasize that mom and baby will be in there. So if a pregnant lady comes in, then she'll most likely go to that room because the bed breaks out into like stirrups. And so it makes it easier for them to treat mom. And then they also have 3 infusion rooms. Sometimes if the ER is really busy, then they'll use those rooms for like less critical patients. But otherwise, the infusion rooms are used for patients who have daily infusions that need to be done. They can come in and have those done. And then they have a 9-bed med surg unit that's just literally right down the hall from them. And one of the beds is more for like a comfort care patient because it also has like an offset room for like family to come visit. So there's like couches, there's a fridge and stuff like that. So that way family can kind of have comfort with the patient as well. And then as you saw, there's the pretty garden that was funded by the provider. And then for my memorable story, I would say, so there was a comfort cares patient and he had raised cattle growing up. And so one of the nurses who also raises cattle, she brought in one of her cows. And so the patient got to feed the cow some apples and just interact with it. And he just really lit up. And he's not too far into his, he's got the 6-month prognosis, but he's not like far into it. So he's still very with it. And so he really got to appreciate that moment. And then for my key lessons, I honestly just learned that nurses really do have like a lot of autonomy with ED in rural hospitals. They really do just about anything. Like they do have a respiratory therapist, but they're only there from like 7 to 3:30. So after that, the nurses kind of take on the RT role. And or if there's like super critical and they need more help, then they'll call Rapid City and talk with their respiratory department. So just seeing that was really cool. And then just them having to like be very, very creative with how they do things. There's not all the resources that like urban hospitals have, and so they have to get creative with how they do stuff. And then with that, they also have to have like a wide variety of knowledge from like young to elderly, and just knowing like the different disease processes, because you never know what's going to walk through that door. And then it was kind of interesting to see like what would all get shipped out. I know like from when I was there, um, MIs would obviously get shipped out just because there's no like cath lab or strokes and stuff like that. But also like one reason that some people would get shipped out is so in custom, at least at this hospital, drips can be started, but they can't be continued. So if they need like a heparin drip or anything like that, they automatically just get sent out because we can't do that ourselves. And so that was really interesting to see like different things that differ. And then also like another memorable thing, I'm gonna go to this. One lady just brought in her albino skunk for everybody to come and pet. So very much a rural hospital. You wouldn't see that here in Sioux Falls. So yeah.
Thank you, Anisha. I loved when you told me that story. Not only the skunk, but the cow. Like, I don't think you'd see either a skunk or a cow brought into the hospital in Sioux Falls. But what a great way for a person who's in hospice to be able to have some joy of something that means a lot to them. That is one of the huge benefits of being in rural health. The whole Custer Hospital, we've had multiple students who've done this immersion there, and they have just had such a great experience there. It is definitely a family type setting with a really good, healthy culture. And the garden piece is just so neat because it's one of the physicians that started that garden. And people, every time I go there, I walk through it and patients really enjoy it. And it's just really, really neat that they have that. Again, something you wouldn't necessarily see in a big hospital. One thing I was going to ask you, Nisha, you mentioned that they are short a little bit like on is it the tech roles and the CNAs, the PCTs?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, I think it was last week, a couple of weeks ago, we were talked about the Grow Your Own, that some communities are doing the Grow Your Own programs to get their local people to go into healthcare. And I was just in Custer a couple of weeks ago doing some recruitment there at their high school, and they did just recently start a CNA course in their high school, so that some of their high school students can become CNAs, which is not only really helpful for the hospital, but it'll be helpful because it's a pathway for them to go into nursing. But even the ones that aren't CNAs, they're really utilizing the people there in the community. So that's great. And I'm glad that you brought that up. Okay, questions for Anisha? Then before I turn it over to Michelle, I just want to ask each of you, what was the best part in general about working or experiencing what it was like to work in a rural facility? Like, what was the best part, kind of your takeaway? And I know you said a memorable story in Key Lesson, but what was the best part?
For me, honestly, just being more hands-on with like previous clinical experiences. Nurses wouldn't always let me do a lot, and so just seeing them trust me and like just going into rooms and like assessing the patient, starting IVs, grabbing labs, stuff like that. It made me feel more like a nurse and more prepared to graduate. Before going, I was not feeling very confident in my abilities.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Nisha. Maddie or Maggie?
I would say like the kind of like the community almost. I really liked the staff and I liked working with them. I thought that it felt like a super safe like learning environment. Um like they want to see you succeed and very like open to questions. Yeah, I just really liked it. I felt like comfortable there. And yeah, what Anisha said, like I felt like I got to learn a lot more than what I did before too.
I'm gonna kind of base mine off of theirs. I just felt like I learned a lot just because it is a smaller community, smaller hospital. They don't have exactly all the resources that a big hospital does. So it was nice to see how they maybe like did their own thing with how they treated them, or like even like makeshift some stuff into how like to make it work for that patient. And just also seeing the diversity was good too.
Excellent. Okay, good. Thank you so much. All right, we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So it is my honor to introduce you. For those of you who don't know, some of you already know Michelle, but Michelle Seton Birch, the Academic Advisor and Recruitment Marketing Specialist for the University of South Dakota for our School of Health Sciences. Michelle, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Dawn. So I'll just give a little background on myself because some of you have seen me at career fairs, some of you have seen me at nursing career fairs. So I've actually been with the University of South Dakota for over 20 years, and I've done a variety of things. I started in admissions recruiting, and I did international recruiting when I first, towards the end of the time in admissions. And then I've kind of come full circle because that was in my first 4 years at the university that I was in admissions. And now in my latter years, I kind of gone back to that. So I'm a dual role person. So I do academic advising, but for our online RN to BSN students. So when I talk to students, I do this all the time over screen and am very used to that piece of it. So it's been great to hear your guys' stories on it because I get a lot older students who are coming back from being in an associate program and want to go into management. And then they're just trying to complete those pieces of that BSN that they didn't get during that associate. So it's kind of neat to actually hear the clinical stories because I don't get to hear those in regards to the students I advise. So it's nice to get a refreshing look at what you guys actually are doing. So you're probably wondering why I asked about MRSA. Well, one of the things that I do in recruitment is I actually take a MRSA case and I let eighth graders for our Promising Futures event, we have eighth graders and some younger kids actually create MRSA wounds with like your mannequin makeup. Like I have homemade scar wax that students actually create wounds, and so they love it. And then we take makeup and they decorate them. And so that's why I was like, okay, where was the wound? What did it look like? What did you treat it with? Because then I have an older version where we'll actually do an injection for the students. I don't let my younger kids, the younger ones, do it, but I will let them do an injection. So that's one of the recruitment things I've done. But that leads into, okay, what are we doing when it comes to our cross collaboration with the tribal nations? Many of you may know or may not know there are 9 tribal nations across the state of South Dakota. And with the HRSA grant, Dawn and I were tasked with visiting those nations twice a year. And so that became it's very fun, but it's also a challenge because some of these reservations are very rural and definitely are different than even the rural spaces that you've been into. So they may have a Indian Health Services on them. They may not. They may partner with the local hospital. It kind of has just depended. So some of the things that we've done in our recruitment and just healthcare exposure for our different for Native American students is we've actually visited the classrooms. So Dawn and I had kind of taken various degrees going different places. I stayed quite a bit on the east side. She would do some on the west, and we'd kind of meet in the middle and do a variety of them. With some of those visits, we've tried a variety of things to see and kind of, I guess, collaborate and also gain the trust and I'm not even sure what the right word, but probably trust is probably the best word. But with some of the native culture, you have to build trust and they have to know that you care about them and want to be in their communities. And so we have spent a ton of time just engaging with them, continually being in contact and going back. So when we would come into a school, a few of them actually asked for us to bring the mobile simulation unit. And I don't know if anybody's seen it. Give me a wave if you've seen it. Maybe a few of you have, maybe a few of you haven't. But we actually have a 40-foot RV that has been transformed into basically a mobile simulation room. And so we have taken this, I've actually driven it out West River, and we've stopped in Phillips, South Dakota. I've actually had it at Rapid City Central. I've then also taken it to Central High School, not Central, but Sisseton High School, and then up into like Mobridge and up into the Indian Health area there. And so it's fun. I've also had it in Sioux Falls, actually, at the Office of Indian Education, and they do an open house there. And so we've had a lot of families that have interacted with it. And some of it is just getting younger generations and younger kids into the mobile unit so that they may just be exposed to it. I had a situation this summer where we had a parent and a couple younger kids, and we have the mannequin in the back it's one of the ones you would use for simulation, and you can listen to heart and lung sounds. And the young man that came in actually really was all of a sudden stopped talking, and I wasn't quite sure why. And we were showing a couple things, and then Dad said his uncle had recently passed away and had been in the hospital. And so he was having almost some PTSD in regards to what he had been exposed to previously. And so us trying to let him know that it is a safe place, and coming into the hospital doesn't always mean that it's the end of life, or that bad things are going to happen, and trying to get that culture knowing that we're just here for you, and we want to let you know what can be done and what can be done safely, and get rid of that stigmatism of being scared or not being treated. And so that was kind of a fun, memorable thing. We also have done what are called med camps and scrub camps. We've actually gone into Pine Ridge, and Dawn and I have done Pine Ridge several times. We've done a variety of activities with students there, for anything from wound care activity to a diabetes activity. There is a lot of diabetes that does take place on the reservations. And so for us, it's more of even helping the students understand, what does it mean when you only should be having X amount of grams of sugar in a day? And then allowing them the opportunity to give like an insulin injection on a injection pad. Don't worry, we're not doing them on real people. And so giving them that opportunity, and a lot of them will say, oh, my aunt does this, or my grandma does this, and having them know, having an understanding and watching their eyes light up when they like kind of put two and two together, or realize there's things that they can help their family members understand, better ways to eat or better ways to take care of their body. And so it's neat to watch them have that connection. We also attended, or have been attending, and will continue to attend, the Lakota Nation Invitational. And this is a really unique event. If anybody's ever heard of it or ever been able to attend or even participated in it, they bring in about 32 teams and tier them for a major basketball tournament. And it is typically Native schools that participate. In order to get invited to Lakota Nation Invitational, you have to be asked by the governing board that puts on the tournament. And so there are some non-native schools that get invited, but they've had that connection or typically compete with those schools to come back. And it's an opportunity where actually the whole university, we have our Native American Services team that comes in, which is Megan Redshirt Shaw, John Little, Brooke Jacobson, myself, Dawn, and we're kind of dubbed basically the Native student recruitment team in a lot of ways. And we just go in and are there to answer questions and help students. A lot of times with this culture, it's not even necessarily about getting the spreading a lot of information about programs, they might ask, but it's actually meeting them where they are and helping them feel comfortable and giving them the opportunity to come to us when they're ready. And a lot of times they'll just ask, they want to know what services are available for the students there on main campus. And so we can talk about that. And so that's kind of a fun thing too. We also get involved in our HOSA Fall Academies, and we're seeing an increase in Native American students, high school students participate in the HOSA chapters within the state of South Dakota, and that's fun. I was just in Rapid last Monday participating and doing a clinical nursing session for the Fall HOSA Academy there. And we had several Native students, and it's just neat to watch them as they continue to look at healthcare and how it's increasing. Some of the things that we actually do on the university side for Native services is every year we provide a new student orientation, giving our Native American students the opportunity to come in about a week to 10 days prior to move-in day and kind of get settled on campus and to let them find their way around without campus being so busy. And then we actually show them to the Native American Cultural Center, the NAC, and what services are there for them. So they have dedicated study space there. They have the ability to print there. They have a lot of times our Native academic advisor from the Academic Career Services Office will actually come in there and work out of there too. They also have various work study positions that students can apply for through there. And then they even do a first year experience for Native students. And they actually encourage some non-Native students to be a part of that first year experience just so they can get that cultural diversity in it. And they go around and they do a variety of things. There is the spiritual mound that is just right outside of Vermilion that they'll take students to and do a walk on those trails. And then just kind of teaching about that Native culture. And for our students that are coming in, first year students, a lot of times they just want to know that some of those home things, those cultural things are available for them when they come to our main campus. And that's kind of the main things that we've done within the healthcare realm, just helping students be aware that USD is a place that they can feel welcome and they can come and continue their education, and hoping and encouraging them that healthcare is a place that they can come and then bring that back to their smaller communities.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. I have to say that all these different trips that Michelle and I have done, some together, some apart, to the reservations has been so rewarding and enjoyable. And the people have just been very welcoming and kind, and it's just been very, very special. And I'm going to miss it, honestly, now that this grant's done. We're hoping to still do some more recruitment with our Department of Labor grant, but probably not to the extent that we have been that we were with the HRSA grant. One other thing, Michelle, would you talk a little bit about the powwows? Because we've done a lot of powwows, and that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, so we actually had the opportunity to attend I have to remember, Rosebud powwow. I have to remember which location we were in. So one year, Katie Franson and I attended the powwow, and they do like a health career fair. And it is amazing to watch the whole community come together, and they bring in their Native services, but they also bring in other entities. And the families basically walked around the entire powwow fairgrounds. And it's not the traditional thing where, Maddie, when you put up the picture of the state fair and you have the front and all the lights and everything. So a powwow at their fairground facilities is almost like similar to like a rodeo arena, but it actually brings in the four different colors, and they're like divided in that to represent the different colors that we all represent. And then they actually open the event with a spiritual dance. They do one of their dances and the drumming, which is really cool. And at the end of it, so they let everybody basically goes around and they can get information or get services and ask questions about the services that are there. And they get tons of things. And it's very interesting that the Native American culture, they like material things. So they love free things. And they will have bags and bags of free things that they've gotten, anything from candy, a bag, a water mug, swag merch items that we kind of maybe take for granted. They actually take them by the dozen and almost hoard them. And then at the end, they actually serve a meal to everyone that comes through. So, and it's put on by that tribe. So, like by the Rosebud community. And then last year, I was not able to 2024. I have to go back 2024. I was not able to attend due to a medical issue. And so Dawn actually went as well and attended the healthcare fair. And so it's really neat to be able to see the number of people that get served at the event. But it is kind of just amazing to see the needs as well of what is out there.
Thank you, Michelle. And the beauty on the tribal lands, I had no idea. When you live in South Dakota, I'm used to like I-90 back and forth, but I'm not up into the tribal lands, and beautiful, beautiful. So, okay, well, thank you so much. I would love to open it up to any questions that you might have for the students and or Michelle at this point. Everybody's being bashful. Any questions?
This is Teresa.
Yeah, go ahead,
Maybe
Teresa.
for the the nursing students, maybe for each of them to answer, would you ever consider working in a rural setting now that you've been exposed a little bit to it?
Personally, I think that I would definitely consider working in a rural facility. I do think that being in Sioux Falls for like the first couple years, just to kind of figure out how to be a nurse as a new grad, would be beneficial. But then afterwards, I really liked Sturgis. I liked the rural community. And yeah, I would definitely consider it.
I would also probably consider it too. I just had a really good experience. You get to learn a lot, but I would also do the same thing, probably wait a couple of years and then look into more rural health before. Yeah.
I personally wouldn't. I have found adults are just not my world, and so I am specializing in kids and would like to stay there.
I think that's one of the wonderful things about nursing in general, as all the students have heard, there's so many different things you can do. And so, yeah, Maddie, if you want to do kids and be specialty peds, then that's probably going to be a bigger hospital. And you might be surprised, some of you who have a specialty in mind, sometimes later in your career, you want a smaller setting. Because I was like that too. I started like in a big hospital ER. And then I did do some rural hospital stuff too. But sometimes later on in your career, you want something different. But that's great because some people want big, some want small, some want pediatrics, some want elderly. So it's awesome. That was a good question, Teresa. Thank you. Anybody else? All righty. Well, I am going to turn it over to Stacy to kind of wrap us up then for the day.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link that is on your screen right now. Oh, Clara already got me to it. If you would be so kind as to just jump into your chat and click on that link, that's going to take you to a very short survey where you can just share feedback on the session today. We value your input and it really helps us to shape future programs. So a couple minutes of your time means a lot to us. Thank you again to all of our presenters today. it's so wonderful to have the opportunity to hear your experiences. Thank you, Dawn, for everything that you have done to put these programs together. And we hope that you enjoyed the session. Please be sure to join us next week, next Monday at noon, for the next one in this series, and visit grnen.org, where we've archived all of these sessions. So if you like what you're seeing, you can go back and listen to all of the ones that we've had the pleasure of participating in over the past couple of years. Okay, everyone, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care now.
Thank you all.